Hello and welcome back to the DCPerform Podcast. My name is Rachael Weber.
And I'm Wonil Gregg.
And we have a great episode for you guys today. We have Gina Anderson from Geodis, who is the VP of Solutions and Growth, and we're talking all things last mile.
It's been a hot topic. There's a lot of buzz around last mile, micro-fulfillment. What is it? Who does it serve? Why do we do it? So we're going to explore that, identify where the opportunities are for the future, and talk about some of the challenges that we have as an industry to keep up with customer demand.
Thanks for tuning in to episode number 8 of the DCPerform Podcast. Well, Gina, welcome to the DCPerform Podcast. It's so great to have you on today.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Well, give us a little background about yourself. So you work with Geodis. Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, so it's my 31st year in supply chain and logistics, pretty much all I've ever done, and had my own consulting practice since 2010, but I'd been following Geodis for quite some time. Our CEO, Madame Lombard, is someone that I just found trailblazing as a woman in logistics. And in 2020, they asked me to join them to build out a product called City Delivery, and more like white glove last mile, but a bit more specialized. Geodis does, they're 4PL, so end-to-end supply chain solutions. There's not a mode of transport that we don't handle. We're a global company doing great things in a lot of different verticals.
So you said that phrase, the last mile. Can you define that for us before we get into the thick of things?
Well, it feels like it has many different meanings now, but generically, it's that final leg of a parcel to a customer's home or a business. I think the differentiation is now in describing last mile is everything that goes into it now based on the growth of e-commerce and how much we have to adapt, whether you're a business or in the supply chain, to that customer experience. What is it that we're trying to achieve when we deliver that last mile package to a business or to a home?
Last mile as being an evolution of the customer expectation in the last 5 years, really, and it really came on during the COVID era. The fact that they've been able to innovate their business model and as a 4PL provide services to those industries who either don't want to handle those types of orders or decide that their entire operations needs to be run by them. This type of thought leadership and executing that now into a tactical execution to service the customer is really where you make a difference. Explain what types of services that the customer is saying we need to have now that maybe they didn't think that way 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
How has that evolved?
When I came to Geodis and I started thinking about, the white glove and the last mile experience, I also wanted to make it an enabler for brands and companies to say, well, how can I take better control of that last mile piece? Because obviously with challenges with FedEx or UPS or, companies, consolidating and merging, something was being left on the table, and that was the service. So I think white glove has morphed into way more, and it should continue, because now brands and companies, and especially what I'm trying to do at Geodis is create these hyper-local networks that a company can treat as a white glove experience, whether it's doing store replenishment because they want to take care of their back of house. They want to make sure that they have what they have ready to go before the store opens. White glove now is morphed into something that's more predictable, time definite, and controlled.
So when you think of the spoke and hub type of model, and traditionally value-added services have been done in the larger hubs where they can control the labor, they can do gift cards, they can do wrapping, they can do personal notes. And the costs to do that have been pretty prohibitive that some companies decide not to provide that. But now the market's saying we demand it. If you don't do it, we'll find someplace that does.
Yep.
The idea of moving that value-added services capability to the spokes and having it more of a localized service, are you seeing that as well?
I think there's still some traditional 3PL type solutions out there, but there are some that are trying to be exactly that, more value add, so they can have a unique differentiator in the marketplace. So those value added services are, that's why I was trying to create that, what I just explained. This is a value added service by being able to help a company do that and create a little bit more personalization for that in experience. So the value added service isn't so much just, fluffing it up and making it look so great for that. It's more operationally, and I think a differentiator for those types of companies to come out and do something different. A company like Phillogic, that's what they specialize in. They're inside malls and allowing that specialized type service where they can do microfilament type things and add that value added service right there in that area that's closest to the customer.
Now we're seeing some of the tech providers, particularly in the retail segment, where you see them closing their stores, but what they're doing instead is having almost like a university type of experience where instead of coming to the store to buy things, you come there and you bring your technology and they can either return it, refurbish it, get some training, and then also the inventory stays regional there. They refurbish it instead of having to send it either back overseas to be refurbished or to a main center, and then it's still available. So when customers come in, they can either do a swap or buy new. Is that something that you're seeing applied now also in maybe the retail area that's not traditionally just technology?
That's exactly what's going on, and I see that quite often now. You just think of something simple as putting a receptacle, the kiosks, the lockers. It is as much as returning something, but then the lockers could be swept and then brought back, like you said, keeping it in that hyperlocal network, re-inventoried and resold and put back into that locker.
Getting on to the different types of industries that this is most suited for. When we think about retail, specialty, luxury goods, consumer goods, are there some industries that this is better for?
I don't know if better is the word. I just think it's different requirements. Time critical of a medical device, the security of a pharmaceutical, the experience that luxury is going after. Each one needs in order for last mile to be successful.
Then you add anything that's regulated or has heavy compliance.
That's a whole nother, right? I've got a customer right now that's got electric batteries that are on the mowers.
Yeah.
There's just DOT regulations or just safety and security.
When we think of the business impact of a company saying, yes, this is a direction that we want to head, and some of the motivations and rationale, they say, this is something we need to do and invest in. There's some interesting data points that you brought to us. I just want to mention a few of them and just rattle off some of your thoughts. Okay. So 93% of the customers expect visibility into the order process. And that comes from transit status to arrival date. I keep thinking of that Domino's pizza model. I love that. When you work it, you can see it along the way, right? And that 40% of consumers will not order again from a direct-to-consumer brand that lacks order tracking and visibility.
Yeah, I think it's staggering numbers to see, but our mobile devices, that is the game changer. As practitioners, as well as brands, we have to think about the next gen that are buying our products. It's one of those things, that is instantaneous, and the technology's out there to support it. You mentioned the Domino. It's getting companies to utilize it more efficiently and to have the capabilities of that tech play translate to the customer experience.
And there's one thing we know about generational change. We experienced it with our parents, and now we're seeing it the other way. And that is, when are you self-sufficient? When can you pay your own flipping bills? And so when I look at this statistic that you threw out, that 28% of online brands' bottom line comes from last mile delivery benefits, businesses spend approximately $10.10 per order on last mile delivery. Yeah. So businesses are spending this extra money for this capability, paying for that, so the next generation gets what they want. When are they going to become self-sufficient?
I don't know. Why are you pointing at me? I mean, you're like blaming me over here. It's all your fault, Rachel. You're making them go broke.
Look, we can say we're guilty for 100%.
Yeah, come on. You love it. You love it. You love that quick delivery.
When you think of that cost, $10.10 per order, and some items that are for purchase are $50. You're losing 20% on margin to provide that. Yeah. At some point, that's going to catch up. Otherwise, that's how you justify the investment in that kind of infrastructure.
I don't know. I felt the number was low when I saw 1010.
Really?
Because I'm in it. I know how much it costs for my partners, but yeah, you're right. And then you think about free returns and the margins, the prices, I quite often wonder, how is it sustainable and what's going to have to give? We do have to just be more efficient.
Yeah.
We have to drive costs down through automation. We have to use some AI and machine learning and some things to get better at what we do and how we do it. But that number is going to go up.
So where does that extra cost go? It goes to technology, it goes to labor, and also probably some of the returns processes and materials to provide that. If we know that a lot of that cost goes there, let's talk about what you're seeing in the marketplace from the customer experience to the order management system when they get online and the options that they have available to them. How does them deciding say, yes, I want a gift card and I want it to say this and the wrapping has to look like this, and because I'm ordering it from Boston, the hub is in Nashville, how does the technology enable that?
It's got to, I guess, go back to having companies understand that the one DC to DC model is not going to support fully. Right. That they're going to have outside parties, a 3PL, or leverage stores, develop relationships with micro fulfillment centers to really take that inventory and get it in multiple locations so that they can achieve speed to market, satisfy that need. And that's been a struggle. That's what I'm seeing out there. It's been a struggle for companies to do that well and to do it right and do it cost effective and have the technology that's going to support that. I know of a couple brands that are augmenting their 1 or 2 DCs with 3PLs or MFCs, the micro fulfillment centers. They're having to understand what their inventory makeup looks like with the demand of the customer. And you see this all the time, right? Yeah. You're doing studies to help them understand this. Right. So the hybrid model is what I'm seeing most, and I think that's going to be the best way for companies to achieve what they're going to need to achieve.
When you think of the different software platforms that enable that, you have the execution level platforms, which are the WMSs, the TMSs, and the demand forecasting and planning piece in particular. And then you think of the financial systems that track the invoicing, the billing, order procurements. And then you have the IoT, that really that's where it seems like the customer interface happens. And then all these other new ways of transmitting data. How are you seeing micro-fulfillment being impacted by that visibility to being able to anticipate and forecast what the demand is?
What I'm finding is the devices have so much usable data that companies aren't using to the fullest potential yet. And a lot of companies are hung up about the cost of the device. But when you take all the data and you see what else it could help you from a planning perspective, it's huge. The other thing that I'm seeing out there is how disparate these systems are. The TMS, the OMS, the sensors, all the smart technology are not integrated and speaking to each other. So there's a company out there called Versus, Versus.io, is how your listeners can find them. And it's interesting because they are the only AI operating system that allows, as a layer, for all those smart technologies to report and to transmit up into. That, to me, is where we need to go. Even versus talking about a spatial twin, where you're taking into consideration everything inside the warehouse and other things like IoT sensors, outside of the warehouse, and really making smart decisions with that data and layering that technology. So I think we're in an inflection point where there's so much good technology coming at us. How do we use that technology and make sense of that technology to where we're going to be able to keep our costs in line, still provide that customer experience, and then also, I think, continue to innovate. It's an exciting time. It's just really exciting.
So data really is the new currency, right? And when you think of it that way, the accumulation of that data, it's all about not just what does it tell you, but it's what are the insights that you can get from it. And from those insights, what's the rationale for you to make change? And ultimately, after you make that change, what's the end impact to the customer? When you think of the evolution of the capabilities, essentially we're going to that 3.0 internet, right? And There's been a lot of talk about that, and it's enabling all the human senses in a technical environment. But what this is going to allow us to do is going to now create another level of awareness, balance, gain, and ultimately intuition. It's about being able to read the data real time and be able to have all those different sensing nodes and all the mechanical requirements to then deliver and service the customer. And in the 3PL world, contractually, the way they're set up, staying on the edge of that to stay current is almost harder for them when you think than a brand who controls their whole process. How do you balance those two things out?
Through partnerships. You and I talked about this, the ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's really through partnerships. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to have the right partners that can enhance our value, right? And one point I want to make that I think you're so good at with your company is, even though we have all this, you still got to go back and find out why isn't something working. We still have to have that human touch.
You know, when you look at the future, while we talk about the vision of what it could be, what are your thoughts when you look at it from a 3PL perspective and their need to continue to evolve, yet have those financial constraints?
Yeah, so I think one example right now is just the evolution into EV, the electric vehicles, right? And, you know, some of the ways that people have had to invest in sustainability. And, you know, when you look at the capital expenditure and the infrastructure investments that it's going to take, so when you say it comes back to a finance decision, but there's also this balance, can we afford not to do it in some respects?
There you go.
I have companies right now asking me for EV milk runs. They want, 53 footers, they want vans, they want box trucks. I mean, you can access these, lease these. But then there's exciting companies like BrightDrop, looking to them for a pilot where we could show that this is a viable way that we can get the unit economics right, where we can consider the investment, not only into our planet, but also being more efficient with the ability to take this vehicle and maximize it in this kind of milk run concept.
The last mile is here to stay. It's going to be a phenomena that's been born out of the customer requirement demand, and as long as that keeps requiring it, it'll be there. It's going to continue to evolve, and it's ultimately going to be dictated by human behavior, what's required.
I think it's an exciting time. Supply chain's sexy and fun. It's not, fax machines putting orders through and
Right.
True.
But it's an exciting time, and however I can help, I'm here for your listeners and for you guys.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Gina.